name is River, and today I'm going to be answering your questions about my off-grid life. I live in a formerly abandoned cabin on my family friend's property in the Pacific Northwest, very off-grid, no electricity or running water. I usually show up on my channel as an off-grid gremlin who has not taken a real shower anytime recently, but sometimes, rarely, I have showered recently and I'm not going to be doing anything dirty, and I like to show up as more of like a Studio Ghibli adjacent character. So that's what's going on today. I asked y'all for your questions about my off-grid life quite a while ago, back in the spring, and I'm finally getting around to answering every single one of them. I'm gonna start with the questions that are the easiest to answer and then get into the deeper questions, the more philosophical questions, the dark truths that I have not revealed yet. First question from Stephen Blair. Do you own or rent the property where you live? I rent. I cover the entire situation of how I ended up here in my video, how I moved off-grid without owning my own land, or some title like that. I'm gonna link it in the description if you want the full answer, but I rent. I do not own this land. Very few people my age own their own land, and I am not an exception to the rule. I got two questions from Leticia. How do you deal with the unpleasant smells that humidity brings? Sorry, my English, I'm from Brazil. We don't have a very humid climate here in the Pacific Northwest. I lived on the East Coast very briefly in the Washington, D.C. area, and that was incredibly humid. Like, you would take a shower and then immediately the air was so wet that it would stick to your skin. We really don't have that much humidity here, so there is no weird smells from humidity because it's not that humid. Leticia also asked, how old are you and Romeo? Romeo is my blue heeler. He is across from the camera right now. I am 30 and Romeo is 7, which is almost hard for me to believe. I've had him since he was 6 weeks old. I am going to be doing an episode eventually. I'm not going to say soon because who knows when my video schedule will fit it in there, but I'm gonna do an episode that's all about the story of Romeo, his history, how I got him, why I got him, where I got him, his life story, his quirks, all of that. So if you're in it for the dog content, be sure to look out for the story of Romeo. Okay, moving on to a slightly controversial topic. How tall is Callie, the horse that I am leasing? I introduced a couple videos back. Callie is 15¼ hands tall. That question was from Diane Young. She was being nice about it. She said she looks small, but she's absolutely gorgeous. Congratulations. I did have a lot of people commenting on that video introducing Callie, saying that she was too small and that I was hurting her by riding her. First of all, pretty much all those people kept saying she was a pony. Ponies are under 14.25 hands, and she is 15.25 hands, which is not tall for a horse, but it's pretty average. When she's out with the herd, there's definitely smaller horses in the herd, there's some taller horses in the herd, and I had the opportunity to ride quite a few of the horses in my riding instructor's herd before I decided that Callie and I were the best match, and my instructor also agreed with that. I don't know how much Callie weighs, but the average Appaloosa weighs between 900 and 1150 pounds. So assuming that Callie is on the smaller end of that and is about 900 pounds, the height of the rider is not as important as the weight of the rider. There are many horse riding cultures where they are on smaller horses relative to their height. I'm thinking of the Mongolian horseback riding culture, also in Iceland with the Icelandic horses, or Icelandic ponies, I guess, because they're pretty small. There's a lot of different cultures where they choose small, strong horses over tall horses, and what determines whether a horse can carry a rider is the weight of the rider and the tack combined, not the height of the rider. I am 5'10 and 145 pounds, and the general rule is that a horse should not carry more than 20% in its body weight in rider and tack. So if Callie is about 900 pounds, 20% of 900 is 180 pounds. I'm 145 pounds. The synthetic saddle that I'm using is probably not more than 20 pounds. It's a synthetic leather combo, but it's pretty light. It's mostly synthetic. So that's putting the combined weight on Callie at 165 pounds, which would still be under 20%. Even if she was as small as 800 pounds, the combined weight of myself and the tack would be 20% or less than her body weight, and that would be a very low estimate for how much she weighs. So first of all, she's not a pony. Second of all, she's pretty average sized horse. I'm just tall. And third of all, she can definitely carry my body weight and have no issues with that. So I also want to add that my first horse, Sadie, who I mentioned in the video about Callie, the reason why I sold her, even though she was my best friend, she loved going out together. I would ride her just like with Callie with a Hackmore bridle, but I would also ride her with no bridle. I would just go hang out with her in the pasture, and I would get on her bareback and we would ride around the pasture with me basically steering with her mane or letting her go where she wanted to go. We were extremely bonded. She was a quarter horse Arabian mix. She was actually even smaller than Callie. She was about like 14.5 hands. Had no problem carrying me. She was very muscular, but I got it in my head that I needed a bigger horse, a taller horse. It was like an ego thing, and I ended up selling her, and I bought a bigger horse. Tonka, my second horse that I had for a very short period of time, was drugged when I bought her, and I didn't know that at the time. I was 16 going out to buy a horse by myself, and I basically had a successful ride with her when I tested her out. She was very calm. I didn't really know what to look for with the horse drugging situation, which is actually pretty common. And then I took her home, and every single time after that I tried to ride her, she would buck me off. Eventually I hired a trainer, and on the very first session the trainer let me know that she was lame in her front leg permanently and that she could never be ridden. And I ended up giving her away to a family to be a pasture pet. But that situation, honestly, is one of my biggest regrets of my life, because Sadie, my first horse, like I said, was my best friend. We were completely aligned on what we wanted to do. She loved trails. I loved trails. She loved to run. I loved to run. We were besties. Like, truly just the best horse I could have ever asked for, and I sold her because of this ego trip about needing a bigger horse. So I feel very unaffected by the comments that people have made saying that Callie is too small for me. I don't think that that is an issue, and my ego does not need to be on a tall horse in order to feel I am a good equestrian. I definitely don't want to be overloading any horse that I'm on, but I'm not overloading Callie. So that's that. Next question. How did you learn to do YouTube and photography? I'm still learning. I've been doing photography since I was in late middle school. One of my good friends, Esther, who I'm still friends with to this day, my longest friend, and her mom had kept all of her clothes from the 70s and 80s. And Esther and I would borrow either her mom's digital camera or my parents' digital camera and get dressed up in these clothes from the 70s and 80s and go outside and take like fashion art photos with them. And that continued all throughout me and Esther's friendship. We still love doing photo shoots with each other, and I started taking photos of my other friends, having my friends basically model for me. I did that throughout all of high school, and at the same time when I was in the 9th grade I took a Photoshop class, and that class really just taught me to be interested in working with computers to make art, which eventually led me to learning the other Adobe programs, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Premiere, which is what I use to edit my videos. I didn't really get into making videos versus photos until I was maybe in my early 20s, and I started making music videos for friends, very DIY, very shitty music videos, honestly. And then I got a job in marketing doing boat sales, and that's when I learned how to fly a drone and started to do more video professionally for that. And I was able to use a camera that I had at work. It wasn't a good one, but you know, I got a GoPro and a drone and the cheapest Canon for work, and I was using those. And yeah, it kind of just like grew from there. I basically didn't really start doing YouTube until I believe it was 2023. That's when I started this channel. And I actually made a lot of videos. I made a video pretty much every week for an entire year, and very few of them got traction. I had like a sewing video that got like 10,000 views, but other than that, they basically had very, very little traction, and I've deleted most of those videos because they're just not very good. Yeah, a lot of my videos were just really long and boring, and it was when I was still living in the city and I was doing urban homesteading stuff, and it just wasn't that interesting. You know, my channel is still very small, but I'm really proud of the videos that I've made since I restarted it, especially like more recently. Next question. Premonitory Palace asks, from another artist person who lives off-grid similar to you, do you ever struggle making friends with the younger people who are living this lifestyle? My wife and I also live off-grid on somebody else's land, and we have a hard time finding younger queer people doing the same. Western North Carolina for us. Also, I love your channel. Thank you. I think that it is definitely hard to find younger queer people in my area. I think that I have expanded my sort of scope of people that I'm trying to be in community with to be much more intergenerational. I personally feel like pretty much all of my friends that I made in the city are my age or very close to my age, and I think that one of the things that was missing in my community was more intergenerational friendship. Since I've moved out here, I've made a big effort to find my community of people who are not conservative in this rural conservative area where I live, but I've actually intentionally tried to build connections with people who are older than me. For example, my neighbors are a queer couple that are super awesome, and they're like a generation older than me. I have some old ladies that I'm friends with who are super awesome. Like one of them used to be an art professor, and it does help that the family that I live with, I was friends with the youngest daughter of the family for like 5 years before I moved out here. When we both lived in Seattle, she still lives in Seattle, I live here, and she brings out, you know, friends quite a bit, queer people that I either am friends with from the city or, you know, can be. We have events here quite a bit to bring people out. So I don't really feel like I feel a lack, even though like I haven't made friends with any young queer people since I moved out here. I don't really feel any kind of lack from that because of the built-in community from the farm that I live on, and then just having community in general who meet my emotional and social needs but aren't young like I am, if that makes sense. And it definitely was a thing of wondering like how I was going to find anyone to date, and my current partner is friends since he was a baby with the family that I live with. So I met him when he came out here to visit the family multiple times, and he is like an open-minded country boy that was raised by non-religious liberal parents, and he is not threatened by my queerness and loves it and celebrates me. So that's super awesome. But yeah, I wish I had better advice. I guess maybe my advice is to find community wherever you can get it. Can't tell, I'm just walking around with my camera and filming a different question in each different place on the property where I live. What are you enjoying most in your life since becoming single? What would you tell your 20-year-old self? How can individuals avoid consumerism and live a more authentic life? And how does that benefit our communities and planet? As I mentioned earlier, I have a partner now. I'm no longer single, but what I enjoyed most about the almost year that I spent being single very intentionally after breaking up with my ex-husband was taking the time to figure out what my needs were independent of anyone else. I had been in back-to-back-to-back relationships that were 1 to 7 years long from when I started dating when I was 14 until the end of my relationship with my ex-husband. And I knew that I needed to take time to myself to not be thinking about anybody else's needs, not be orienting around an us, and basically just be selfish and figure out what I wanted, what felt good for me, what are my routines, how do I like to structure my time, my work, my life, etc. Obviously, choosing to move off-grid and live without electricity and running water and have a very extreme lifestyle was step one to choosing what I wanted, regardless of what other people wanted. And there was a whole lot along the way, but by the time I got to the end of that time period, I got very clear on what I wanted out of a relationship and was not willing to settle for any less, because I got myself to a place where I was very happy being single and enjoying being single, and also investing in my other relationships that were not romantic, and really like leaning on my friends and growing my friendships and expanding my local community where I moved and all of that. And I used to think that relationships take a lot of work, and I readjusted my perspective to the idea that I'm not going to be with someone that I want to change. Obviously, people are growing and changing over time, and I'm happy to be there for the evolution of my partner growing and changing in their life, and I would like to be with someone who is always trying to evolve and change in a good way, but I would not be with someone again who had characteristics about them that I wanted to change and was trying to change. I'm not going to change anyone, and I'm not going to compromise on my core values and what I want out of life in order to be in a relationship. And figuring all of that out made it so that when I connected with my current partner, I felt very sure that this was the right thing for me. And throughout our, dating, courting process, I was continuously checking with myself to make sure that our connection was aligning with what I wanted out of life. And the feedback I kept getting was that this only made my life better and only helped me get closer to my goals and only helped me experience the adventures and skill building that I want out of my life. So I also really enjoyed ripping ass whenever I wanted to and having nobody around to witness my grossness. So that was good. What would I tell my 20-year-old self? There's a lot I would tell myself. I would tell myself that it's okay to not know what's going on, and it's okay to be in a time period of figuring things out, and that the best thing you can do is to just pursue what you're interested in and allow those things to come together into a more complete adult life later, and to just keep pursuing what you're interested in and switching when you're done being interested in that, and just see where the breadcrumb trail of life takes you, which I think is what I've always done, but I used to feel a lot of anxiety about the uncertainty of that, even though I was choosing that path for the most part. And I would just tell myself to stop worrying and keep living. Investing your time into community and arts and culture is the best way to avoid consumerism and live a more authentic life. Consumerism a lot of times is filling a void of your basic human emotional needs not being met, and a lot of times that comes from isolation, overworking, not being connected to nature, etc., etc. And a lot of those things are outside of our control to a certain extent, living under capitalism, but to the extent that it is under your control, get outside, see your friends, dance, sing, make art, and try not to overwork yourself. And it'll be easier to avoid the trap of thinking that bringing new items into your life is going to make you happy. Okay, and then the last question, how does that affect our communities and planet? Well, very directly, because consumerism is antithetical to building strong, resilient, sustainable communities and protecting the planet. And when you prioritize community and being out in nature, you are more likely to do things that are going to positively affect both of those, which go beyond just like you as an individual, while also supporting you as an individual.
What's up, bud?
Meandering Woodsman asks, yes, do you do like doo-doo in a bucket? I don't know if I could go nuclear in Spiderland. Also, I'm wondering if doo-dooing in a bucket affects your dance career. I'm wondering if there's an off-grid club around here where I can dance too. Well, this is my friend Ansel, so I know he's just being silly, but I said I would answer every question. So I do not doo-doo in a bucket. I doo-doo in an outhouse, and I piss in a bucket frequently. Sometimes I just piss outside, but I found that the bucket is extremely convenient for when you don't want to go all the way outside and find a good spot to pee in the middle of the night or the day. And then you can just dump it out when you want to. Zero splash, zero problems. But yeah, no, I'm not pooping in the bucket because then I'd have to fully clean out the bucket. And that would be gross. And I have an outhouse for that. It does not affect me dancing at the club. I'm not really sure how to answer that question in a serious way, but basically when I go to the city to dance, I stay at a friend's house and I shower and get all cleaned up, and off-grid gremlin goes away for the weekend. Kim in the Lou asks, what's been your favorite part of living off-grid, and what advice would you give to another person thinking about living off-grid? My favorite part about living off-grid has been the peace and quiet and being connected to nature, not needing to decide to go out into nature, but just being in nature when I wake up. That has been by far the greatest gift, and I don't think I could go back. That isn't inherent to being off-grid in the sense that I could definitely live somewhere on the electricity grid and still have it be super immersed in nature, but those two things have been combined for me. In terms of actual things that are specific to being off-grid, not paying utilities is really awesome. And advice to someone who's thinking about living off-grid would be probably to do a lot of dispersed camping before, do a week at a time of dispersed camping. And if you love that, if you love having no electricity and running water and pooping in a hole, then you would probably have the tenacity to enjoy the process of getting set up off grid. How did you meet and get Romeo in your life? I will give the full story on my The Story of Romeo video that I'm planning to do, but the short answer is I got him from a cattle farm in Yakima. He is descendant of many hard-working cattle dogs, and now he has no cattle to herd or sheep to herd, he just has me. Although in the future, very near in the future, there's going to be chickens involved, and I'm excited for that. Maybe he'll protect the chickens or herd the chickens and other animals, you know, in the future for sure. Brittany also asked, what is your favorite meal to make off-grid? One of my favorite meals to make is ramen. Sorry, Romeo's splashing around in the background. I'm down by the creek. I really like stir-frying a bunch of vegetables on my cast iron grill and then making up noodles, doing the sauce. That's kind of my favorite meal to make in general, but it just really hits when you're eating it, you know, on the porch after a long, cold day in the winter especially, but really any time of year. These are still Brittany's questions. What is one thing you miss when you are off-grid versus in town with friends? I miss the accessibility of high quality food. Closest grocery store is 35-40 minutes away from me, which is a lot of gas, and it doesn't really have a lot of the things that I like. I talked about this in my pros and cons of living off-grid video, which I'll link, but I try to eat mostly organic. I have a lot of health issues and it helps with that. It's also better for the planet and better for your body. And those options are super limited. It's kind of like a grow it yourself or good luck situation. And when I am in town, it's really nice that I can just pop over to pretty much any grocery store, but also there's grocery stores that I specifically like and get stuff that I like to eat that's also relatively healthy. That is super nice. And if you're asking specifically in town with friends, like what I miss about that, I do miss hanging out with my friends, but I get really overstimulated by cities, and there are a lot of the ways that I can hang out with friends there are kind of not ideal for me, so I'm pretty stoked when my friends come out here to visit me. That's kind of like the end-all be-all of hanging out with friends, and since it's the summer right now, I've been having a good amount of friends come out, which is super awesome. I've got 5 friends coming out this weekend, which I'm really stoked about. Final Brittany question is, what is one place you would like to travel and learn from? I assume you mean out of the country because, well, even with out of the country, I would like to do a lot more traveling around BC, Canada. I have family on the Sunshine Coast, and I've spent time over there and a little bit of time in Vancouver, but that's it. I think that I could learn a lot from exploring the old growth forests. A lot of them are under attack. Check out the Fairy Creek blockade, but I would love to spend more time in the forest up there, and that's something that I could do via driving. I really try to avoid air travel as much as possible and just limit my use of planes. I used to really dream of doing a lot of traveling. I have a degree in media studies that is based around like Spanish media and Spanish literature, and I used to want to travel to every single Spanish-speaking country, but with the oil crisis and the impact of air travel, I now feel like I'm just gonna try to read books and watch documentaries from every Spanish-speaking country, and I don't really feel like entitled to get to travel the world, if that makes sense. If I am going to be able to travel outside the country, I would really like to go to Scotland and Norway one time because that's where the majority of my heritage is from, and I think that that would be really cool to learn from. Also, there's kind of a lot of like parallels in the environment between those parts of Europe and where I'm at because of the latitude, or is it the longitude? I'm not sure. And then I would really like to go to the southern cone, Argentina and Chile. I'd love to go to Patagonia. That would be really special for me. I was really into learning about the political history, the Dirty War, etc. of Argentina, and it would be really interesting for me to get to go there and experience it in person. I will be okay though if I never get to get on a plane again. That's how I feel at this point. I have accepted that a lot of my travels are going to be in the area that I can drive in, and even more so than that, I want to be able to do exploring and like week-long trips on horseback. I also want to do the Pacific Crest Trail, like at least part of it with Romeo on foot. So I have a lot of traveling that I want to do in the local area. I would love to be able to crawl on my feet all over the Pacific Northwest before I die, and I think that I'll be able to do that in due time. Good and Green asks, advice on rebuilding a life when your previous plans stop being achievable. That's a remarkable thing and you're doing it well. That is a great question. I have just always felt a really intense drive to live the best possible life that I can, and have always felt very intensely that there's only one life that I can live. So I tend to sort of stubbornly pursue my ideas and my visions for my life until they become like physically impossible to continue with. But usually by the time it gets to that point where it's like so abundantly clear that I can't continue on that path, for example, the path that me and my ex-husband had set out to be on together, when it became abundantly clear that that needed to end, then I feel like I'm usually ready to pivot to something else. Yeah, I've just already like beat the dead horse, and I do want to live an exceptional life with a lot of agency and freedom. And that's always been kind of the driving factor. Like, I'm happy to work hard, but I just want to have freedom in the way that I work, and to do meaningful things, and to be aligned with the planet and all of that. And I know that it is a privilege to be able to find a lifestyle that works that way in this capitalist system, and that I need to work really hard and be creative and be open-minded in order to be able to do that. So when one thing ends, I basically, take a moment to grieve, and then I'm going on to brainstorming plan B. And it's just like, I'm not gonna let one thing failing stop me from moving forward, because indecision is also a decision, Tracy Anderson, 5200, asks, I would love to hear more about your art. I actually am almost surprised that nobody has asked me this question before, because I start out a lot of my videos saying that I'm an artist, and it would be understandable to be like, what is the art? I consider myself to be a multimedia, multidisciplinary artist, jack of many trades, master of absolutely none of them. Dance is definitely the main form of art that I do. Some people think of art as being just visual art. I don't think of it that way, but also my dance can be visual art, in that I do a lot of dance videography and photography, both of myself and of other people. A lot of times in nature, that's my favorite theme to go off of. I'm an aerial dancer, primarily trained in pole dancing. I do a little bit of lyra, I do a little bit of aerial silks, I do a little bit of fire flow, I do a little bit of just dancing in nature with the elements without any props. So dance is like my primary medium at the moment. For a long time, graphic art and graphic design art was the main medium that I worked in. I learned how to use Adobe Illustrator when I was 18, 19, and then I started using it to do like poster art, vintage inspired poster art of my friends, and then I used that to make like a whole t-shirt line. It was called Feminist Fatale, and I actually like had a fairly successful Etsy shop doing that, but then I wasn't able to figure out how to ethically source the t-shirts and the printing of them and make money off of it, so I closed the shop, and I also sold posters on there. I've done a lot of album artwork for musician friends. I've done a lot of merch. I've done a lot of event posters. Hi. Oh, why hello there. Isn't that a silly boy? Isn't that a silly boy? Well, Romeo's decided to be in the frame now. Yeah, that was actually the main medium that I was doing when I got Romeo, and then I got Romeo and I kind of just realized I didn't want to be sitting on the computer all the time, and now my computer time has really shifted to editing videos. Like, I just only have so much sitting at the computer in me, and I'm more interested in making videos and cinematography and all of that than I am in the graphic art stuff, but I still do use it for myself. I'm making all of my own stuff when I'm doing designs for social media. I produce an all stripper pole show in Seattle, and I make custom really cool poster art for each show. I even had an exhibition once of my graphic poster art. It was very, very small, just at like a little indie gallery in Seattle, not like any big deal or anything, but that's a whole thing. I'll put some of my art on the screen. I would like to eventually make some merch for my channel, maybe some art of Romeo, and find a screen printing shop that will make it into, maybe some posters, maybe some t-shirts, and sell those as merch for the channel. I think that would be really cool, but I just don't have the money to invest in that right now. So if you're interested in that, maybe leave me a comment letting me know. So there's that. So dance, graphic art, design. I have written quite a few songs. I haven't published any of them, but I'm trying to get more into music and doing music project stuff this winter. Me and Ben and my older sister, I use all of her music for my channel. I don't use any stock music at all. I use all my sister's music, occasionally my friend RJ's music, but she and I and Ben, my partner, want to do a like neo-pagan metal band situation, which would be awesome. And then I'm also a writer, which I consider to be in the art category. I have done some published poetry, some published short stories, all a really long time ago. I almost finished a novel. I'm like 200,000 pages in, and we'll see if I ever finish that or if I just end up starting another one. But I would say that writing is actually the closest to my heart, and that almost makes it the hardest for me to do. But I'm just not like in a practice of doing it right now, and when I don't do it regularly, it just doesn't happen. Oh, I would also say that textile art is a big part of me as an artist as well. I love to sew, and sort of like the ultimate for me is whenever I can combine two or more of these disciplines. So for example, I want to, with the band that I'm going to make with my sister and Ben, I'm going to make us like all custom outfits that fit like a nature theme that we're doing, and then I'm gonna shoot like a music video, and I'll be dancing in the music video at different points, have some of my writing and the lyrics of the song. Being able to combine the different disciplines into something and having my hands kind of in all of it and having it be really intentional is the goal. I feel like because I, do dance videography and photography for work, and I do YouTube for fun, but also I do make a little bit of money off of it, and I am trying to, have it be a part-time job or whatever. That's also kind of like work. It's not just purely art, like I do try to like add artistic flair to it in editing and, the way that I shoot things and whatnot. But anyway, I just feel like recently it's like I do so many art things for work that I don't often make time to just make things purely because it's the art that I want to make, and that's definitely something that I want to do more of. At risk of sounding pretentious or overly philosophical, I think that anybody can be an artist. It's a mentality about choosing to make art out of life. For example, with the door project, I could have just refinished the door, but I chose to turn it into an art project that represented my overall project of the whole cabin and what it meant to me to have my own space. And I went way above and beyond for that when I really didn't need to, because it gives me satisfaction to make art out of everything that I do. And my dream is to build my own house and build all my own custom furniture for it, and basically to just be very hands-on about everything that I do and customizing it and using recycled materials and found materials and all that good stuff to create, just create. You must create, or at least I must create. I don't know about you. My personal pain point asks, how have you changed in the past few years that you didn't expect? And there's a huge difference in the intensity between working as a dancer in nightlife and living a simple off-grid life. How do you combine these, find balance, and when do you feel the most like yourself? Great questions. I think I've just become so much more competent and confident in my ability to learn pretty much anything that I want. I had already started gaining physical confidence, maybe like 5 years ago when I first got into dance, but I did not expect to become as strong as I am now. I basically feel like I can learn anything that I want to learn. If I'm motivated to learn it, then I can learn it. And I feel very confident in that, and that gives me just like a feeling of confidence and competence that I did not have a couple years ago. And I definitely think that living off-grid has helped with that, because I've been confronted with many situations where I have to learn my way through it or out of it. The lifestyle that I'm living of traveling to on the weekends to the city to work allows me to live this off-grid lifestyle, but it also gets in the way of living the off-grid lifestyle because I'm not here all the time. I am losing the battle with the mice. I don't have a lot of energy for stuff like gardening, which I feel like I would have more for if I was here all the time. There's definitely a feeling of being unsettled and a feeling of constantly packing and unpacking my bags. I do really love Portland. I like going there to work, but I'm trying to transition out of going there every weekend. And this entire time I've seen my job as a nightlife dancer as a transition tool, not as like a end all be all. I absolutely love performing, but performing is different than the very like social and sales oriented experience that working at the club is. But I actually am training to be an arborist right now. I was gonna just say like, oh, I'll tell you later, but I'll just tell you now, whatever. Basically, my partner Ben is an arborist, and he's training me to be an arborist with him, which is super exciting. I think I've mentioned before that when I lived in the city before this, my ex and I had a permaculture-based landscaping company together. And after we broke up, I was pretty devastated to basically lose my in the plant industry. I could have like gone back into landscaping, but the wages for landscaping, if you don't own your own business, are pretty terrible, and the area that I live has really low wages to begin with, so that wasn't really an option. But arborists actually have a lot higher wage than landscapers generally, and it involves climbing, which I absolutely love climbing, and that is related to me, you know, being an aerial dancer. I've got really good climbing muscles. The last video that I put out was all about Ben training me on climbing old growth trees in Mount Rainier National Park. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever made. It's one of the lowest performing videos that I've put out, but if you didn't watch it, check that out. It's super fun. But yeah, I'm basically training to be an arborist so that I don't have to travel to the city to work. I will be, you know, traveling to people's properties to work, but within a much smaller range. And I won't have to send Romeo to the dog sitters on the weekend. For a really long time, I took him with me to Portland, but it was really stressful and hard because I'd be trying to manage, you know, working at night with like his sleep schedule and trying to take care of him and give him enough walks a day. And he destroys things when I leave him alone, so I couldn't leave him in any of my friends' houses, and I had to take him in the car with me all the time. Now I have an incredible dog sitter who's very affordable, so Romeo goes to the dog sitter when I'm working off of the farm. But yeah, I'm training to become an arborist, and hopefully we'll be transitioning to doing that full-time by the end of this year, which I think will be much more aligned with my interests and my future and my energetic needs. I guess the question of like, how do I find balance? Because I just like complained a whole lot about how it isn't balanced. I am a Gemini. There are things I love about cities, and I try to enjoy them while I'm there. I will get a lot of my favorite food. I'll see my friends who are in the city and just try to really enjoy that while I'm there, and then really enjoy this while I'm here. And that's kind of how I've stayed sane through this intense and very sort of opposite schedule that I've done. When I feel most like myself is when I'm on the trail with Romeo. When Romeo and I are out hiking, everything feels so aligned. I feel like the most myself. I feel the most in my zone. I feel like I'm doing what is the purpose of me and my boy here, which is being on the trail together. And it just feels amazing. And I get to hike and swim and hike to swim more than I ever have in the rest of my life since I moved out here. So that's super awesome. Okay, folks, thank you for tuning in to this Q&A. I will do another one at some point, but you can always, you know, send me questions in the comment section of the videos or on Instagram at a.river.dreaming. I'm going to go ride Callie now and change out of this beautiful dress into something that can get nice and horsey. And I will be doing a little update video on my horse adventures eventually. I know I got a lot of new followers from the horse video, and I'm sure a lot of y'all are waiting to have more horse content. So that'll be coming out eventually, and I hope you enjoyed the intro with me and Callie, and maybe I'll do a little outro of some more footage of Callie and I as well. All right, bye.